Hey everyone, welcome back to Make Others Successful, a podcast where we share strategies, stories, and insights about how to build a better workplace and in turn make others successful. Today we're back. We're continuing the conversation that we've been on this past couple episodes. We have talked about internal communication, internal collaboration, and today, external collaboration. But before we dig into like how we think about this and how we approach it, what our mindset is, and some of the principles that we stand by, do you want to like lay out how do we draw a line, or why is it even important to make a distinction between internal and external collaboration at work?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
It all comes down to how close you are to someone else, uh, and a lot of it has to do with not only how technically things work because of that, but then also if you think about going to a client meeting, you might behave and approach that very differently than coming to an internal meeting,
Mhm.
and they're just different, right? For those reasons. Um, and on top of it, like I was saying, there's technology challenges, right? Uh, by far, the most popular communication method for external people is email, and that's okay from us, right? Like we're like the people like
Is
anti-email,
it?
don't do
Right.
email,
Is it?
but it is
Sometimes.
okay to do that externally. Why? Because technologically, there's not a lot of other great options that you can do immediately without some other work, without some other effort that has to happen. So,
Okay, so drawing a distinction between you have a different relationship, there's maybe a different premise of why you're talking to the people, and then sometimes there's different technology limitations, which is why we separate those two.
yep,
Is that accurate?
yep.
Okay.
I
So,
do want to, if I can though, I want to talk about collaboration versus communication
okay.
because it's also a challenge. People might think like communication with external parties is like marketing materials, like, I'm sending out a new brochure for this thing. Though that's communication primarily.
Hmm.
Collaboration is when you have an external party and you're trying to actually work on a shared outcome, right?
Work together.
You're working together on something, right? You're not just trying to deliver them content, provide them information. You're working together on an outcome.
Hmm. Okay. That's good. I feel like I dove right into this stuff. For someone that might be listening to this as their first episode, can we do intros really quick?
Yeah.
Just share who we are?
Sure.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So this is Matt. I'm one of the principals here at Bulb Digital, and my focus is on the communication collaboration space.
Cool.
I'm Emma, and I'm our delivery lead, which is a fancy way of saying I help deliver our projects. So that actually has a lot to do with collaborating with our clients as well as communicating internally to make sure we're aligned when we deliver our recommendations and projects to our clients.
All right. I'm Mitch Harima. I juggle a lot of things, honestly, but I do a lot of our operations and marketing, and have my hand in some projects technically as well.
I'm Livy. I'm the marketing coordinator here. So every social post, newsletter you get, blog post, I am managing all that behind the scenes so we can provide really useful content for you. So yeah,
No spam ever, right? Only
never
good,
spam.
insightful, valuable content,
Yes.
insights.
Yes.
Yeah. We don't write
Never.
content, we provide insights.
Yeah. We want
Yeah.
to make you successful.
Right,
That's
right.
the goal.
So you can count on Livy to show up in your inbox every Thursday.
Yeah, it's me.
Yep. Cool. Okay, let's get back to external collaboration. Let's start really broad and say, like, how do we summarize how we think about it, or how a business should think about it? What should the mindset be as they're approaching external collaboration?
Well, first, let me set the stage of what is it? Who is someone who's external, right? So
Sure.
I think the way we consider it is your internal folks are people who typically have the same email address domain as you. So it's everyone that's within your company, and so anyone external is someone who's not on your technology, who's not an employee of your company. So now, if you think about everyone internal is who has the same email domain as you and is really an employee of your company, everyone outside of that is an external.
Yep.
collaborator.
Mhm.
So whether that's
Customer.
customer, whether that's someone who's receiving your newsletters, and so that's why it was good you made that distinction between
Yep.
communication and collaboration. I think for this podcast, we're going to talk about really people you work together with because
Mhm.
it's specific to collaboration. But an external party could really be anyone. It
Yep.
could be your landlord,
Yep.
right, of your office building. It's
100%.
really anyone external to your
Yep.
company.
And the collaboration aspect means you're working together on some shared outcome, basically.
Right.
Okay, so why is external collaboration so important? Why are we calling this out as a thing that businesses need to pay attention to? How should they be thinking about it?
Yeah, so there's several pieces that really make up why this is so important for organizations. Probably the biggest one is that there is huge gains that can be made in profitability and in effectiveness of employees and external people when you talk about improving this collaboration. Very few organizations have zero parties that they're involved with externally and collaborate with externally. Maybe you don't collaborate with your customers externally, but maybe you collaborate with vendors. There's so many ways
Mhm.
that if you can improve that, you're just going to have a better experience, and the bottom line is going to be improved by making this better.
Can you give some examples of like what you would consider bad versus good, or like how does that actually trickle down into, say, profitability?
So for an organization like ours, it's even more important. Our business is largely dependent on us interacting with external parties, and so having an effective project many times is all about being effective with our collaboration with our partners and our customers. So for us, that's the big thing. So like we have a project. How are we going to, like, one of the first things we talk about when we go through and do a project kickoff is how are we going to communicate? How are we going to collaborate?
Mhm.
Let's define how that's going to work for this customer to make that work. If we didn't and we just let it be whatever it was, most things would default to email, and it would be a very poor experience for everybody involved to try to make that work.
Mhm.
Primarily because, like I said before, email is okay in many cases, and we're going to talk a little bit about why in the scenarios that it would be okay. But for example, if we have a project where we're developing a strategy document with a customer, we need to both be able to edit that document together. I do not want to create a draft, send it to them, have them read the draft, make some comments, us make some further
Hopefully they'll
revisions.
track changes
Yeah,
so that
send
we
it
can
to-
see what their changes are.
It's
right.
it's just a nightmare.
Yeah.
That those types of scenarios, for us at least, like that's huge. Other examples that we have from customers, people are looking to manage their external parties, external vendors, right? We're an organization that has lots of contractors and other people that are engaging with us. How do we make that a better experience for them and for us? How do
Mhm.
we track better what they're doing, and how do they get better feedback from us? And let's figure out how to make that happen in a good way, because email to a project manager doesn't work, right? Because now you're relying on that project manager to communicate with someone else, and maybe they don't understand what's going on, or maybe the project manager's out for a week and you didn't know it.
Mhm.
Like there's so many things that can happen that if you don't have a way to effectively collaborate, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
I think you're touching on a really great practical piece of advice there of the first step is to have a plan.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a plan, it will typically default to not having the right people involved, not having the correct teams, and it's just a bunch of emailing back and forth. So step one, have a plan. We're going to talk about the ways in which you can actually collaborate, but the first thing is to call it out with whatever that external partnership is going to be so that you're both on the same page of, hey, this is the best way to effectively work together.
Yep.
Cool. So we covered that it will eventually trickle down. It'll eventually affect the bottom line. So we think it's really important. Are there any other kind of approach mindset things that we take into external collaboration?
We touched about it a little bit, and that is not every scenario is the same. So you should not go into this saying, I'm going to use this practice for doing external collaboration, and it's the same for everybody.
Mhm.
That's a recipe for failure, largely because you are not in control of the external party. If it's an external vendor, if the vendor is not capable of using a method that you want to use, you don't have much options, right? Like you can't affect change on that very much without just saying, we're not going to work with you anymore,
Mhm.
or you're going to do it our way, right? So when we have that conversation, like we talked about, like I'll use us as an example. When we have that conversation at the beginning of the project, it is a conversation. We don't go, this is the only way, and that's
Right.
it, right? If we're working with somebody who we know is we're doing a project to teach them about Teams, we're definitely not going to try to use Teams to do that
Sure.
communication from the get-go, right?
Sure.
We may transition to it, but that's not going to be our platform of choice to start with, right?
Yeah, and there, like you just said, there has been times where we've been in a relationship with a client and we've shifted towards something else because we're like, what works best?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
just because you define it right up front doesn't mean it's going to be
Yep.
forever. It can evolve throughout the life cycle.
Yeah, you really need to make an assessment of both from your organization's perspective and the organization that you're communicating, or the pure person they're communicating with, what's the most comfortable, what's going to be effective with them, right? And then make some decisions about how to approach that. So having flexibility and having an open mind, and as Emma pointed out, having a plan, right?
Yes.
Like, if you say this is how we communicate with all of our vendors, that can go into your vendor selection process, and you can make a choice whether or not that vendor is really a good partner if they cannot deal with what you're doing, which is actually a very common thing. Many large organizations have vendor management systems, and unless you're willing to work with that vendor management system, which is their custom way to manage that collaboration,
Have you ever found a good vendor management system?
I mean,
Or are they all
your
bad?
definition is not good, right? Vendor management systems work. They're large organizations. They work for the large organization. And if you're a large organization working with a large organization with, millions of dollars in contracts with them, it probably works great. If you're a person who's doing a $50,000 project one time, it's kind of onerous.
Okay, and any other thoughts on this before we dig into some of our principles?
I think the last really important piece is the security aspect of this functionality.
Yeah.
Right? Security is a key component to why this communication and collaboration, or this collaboration component, is important.
That's one of the biggest questions we get. Like when we are engaging on something, is this secure? Can I use this? Can I trust it?
Or how do we are there things that we can make it more secure, right? Sending emails back and forth can be secure with encrypted email, end-to-end encryption, et cetera, but people have to choose to do that, and not everybody does. In addition, those email that, it takes one person one time to make a mistake about it, and you can have a different problem. Transferring and making sure that you're effectively collaborating using tools can make your collaboration so much more secure than sending emails back and forth, or using an FTP server back and forth, or all those types of things.
A lesser sort of known, I guess, aspect of this, of security, I would say, is also confidentiality, which comes up with our clients at different points as well. So the thing that comes to mind, because we're all remote now and it's very hybrid, meeting recordings. So when you actually have to share meeting recordings with an external team, being able to put things in place where you get to decide with that leader who is going to have access to that meeting recording, especially if there's confidential topics discussed in that, which in some of our projects there are. So you do have to have the ability to create some security and some confidentiality around that.
Yeah. To that same point, probably one of the most important things about security is not just that you care about security, but oftentimes there is security is in direct opposition to convenience.
Sure.
Right? You just mentioned sharing video recordings. You can make it really easy to share those videos out with lots of people. I just want to be able to give somebody a link and have them access it. But then I don't know who's accessing it, right? Then I can't shut it off when I really want to, or I can't shut it off for this person and add this person, right?
If you do, then you got to send a new link to the people that
correct, right? And it's so it's not just that security is important, but your mindset and your thought about how you do collaboration needs to involve security and the recognition that these two are opposing forces. You're going to have to either give up some convenience and train people and deal with these, intricacies, or you're not going to be as secure as you want to be, right? Like there is those two opposing forces related to this.
Okay, to summarize, external collaboration is really important, and it's something that you should have the right mindset about because it affects the bottom line.
Yes.
It is not the same for everyone. It's going to be unique across different external collaborators, and so it's important to kind of frame your mindset in the right way when you're approaching that. And then third is security. It's super important, especially for some confidential or people with confidential documents, and they need to share some of that information. What's funny about the next section is that it's about principles of what are some things that I can stand by and use throughout my day-to-day and help me make decisions on, is this the right thing to do for external collaboration? What's funny about that is that the second point is that of our mindset was it's different for everybody. And so we're trying to make a distinction there of the solution is different for everybody, but these principles should hold true across anything that you're doing in regards to external collaboration.
Yeah, it's really more about you should be assessing whether or not these are the right things to do when you're doing the activity that you're doing. And it's okay if they're not. Like if you decide that in this particular scenario, other things override this, that's kind of okay.
Yeah. Okay. Emma, you want to tee up our first principle?
Yeah, our first principle is to use a tool to help schedule meetings. Don't go back and forth on your email with an external partner. This is part of my role here is coordinating and scheduling meeting times. And I think anyone who's ever scheduled a meeting with more than 2 people knows it can be very difficult, especially in our busy world, to actually find a time that works for all of the parties. There are modern tools out there that are designed specifically to help us do that.
What's your favorite tool?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, one that we use here at Bulb Digital is called Calendly. And we did recently do a video on this, and we had a few people comment that Microsoft Bookings has really upped their game and is much more on par with Calendly. So I'll be checking that out soon, likely, because we do pay a price to actually use Calendly.
If I remember correctly, they're rebranding it as virtual appointments from Bookings. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on this. And I think that lends to the use case better that I've seen over the years, where it's, think about like a hair salon. I am a hairdresser, and I want people to be able to come in and book a service with me, a 1-hour haircut or something like that. That is the core functionality of that tool. Where it typically falls short, and that we've seen is that you can't do collective bookings where it's like, okay, we're going to record a podcast. Let's look at a calendar where we can pick a time that works for all 4 people, pretending we were like external or something.
Yeah.
And so that collective functionality was really important with the tool that we chose. And then I think they mentioned a couple other things like find time and that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, there's really like back to this is why this is all, it triangulates itself. Like security is another aspect of it, right? So Calendly requires you to be able to give someone access to see your calendar, right? Some organizations won't allow that.
Right.
They're like, nope, we're not going to do that. Guess what? There's still options. Find time or polling, which is really what it's called now.
Schedule polling,
allows you to say, here's some options that work for me. Do they work for you? And it just manages the whole, yes, this works for me. No, this doesn't work for me. I prefer this. I don't prefer that.
Yeah.
Like that's what
it'll
this does.
Block out your time so that you can kind of hold it until I pick one.
Is it ideal? No.
Yeah.
But
I don't like that.
Better,
I don't like blocks on my calendar.
It's better than sending an email back and forth.
Anything is better than sending an email back and forth. And to the one thing you said about Calendly, people don't actually have access to see what's on your calendar. They just see when you're booked and those sort of things. I'm sure there's a couple of people going, I would never use that then if someone's going to be able to totally see my calendar.
Sign me.
But that's what you meant.
Yeah, and like we've had customers, large enterprise customers, who for compliance reasons say, we cannot allow that. We're not going to allow people to even have that as an option, right? But I would even say to that, like I call, you're wrong. uh, like for salespeople, that's what they're doing anyways. They're going to
Yeah,
be doing the same
right.
thing anyways. They're going to
Right.
take a screenshot of their calendar and be like, hey, look at like.
Right.
So even if it's just for a small segment of your workforce, it can make the world of difference in regards to making it easier to collaborate.
So obviously I use this all the time at our business and in our industry because I'm trying to coordinate time with 3 or 4 team members on our side with maybe 1 or 2 external members or team on their side. Another business I could think that could really benefit from this is anyone in the interior design business or construction business where you have multiple team members internally that need to meet with an architect or a painter or a kitchen redesigner or any of those things. And I sure we could come up with a million other industry examples, but just think of whenever you're trying to get a few people on your team and you're coordinating their calendars, like you're talking about this collective tool. It's just something that Outlook can't do for you. And it's worth investing in figuring out these tools so that you're not emailing back and forth or even picking up the phone to call to try
I
to
wish
find a
we
time.
had an actual metric of how much time it saved us to just, even as simple as like
Hours.
yeah.
Yeah.
a new lead that I was talking to the other day. I became available and I could have a meeting sooner. And so I was literally like, hey, if you want to meet sooner, go grab a time. And it was
Sure.
all of a sudden it shows up on my calendar and it was really like almost no interaction from me besides here's a link. And
And it's
We showed
it's
up in the meeting
starting
together.
it's starting that relationship on a great foot because it didn't start on a painful, oh my gosh, they're never available or oh my goodness, you want to remove as much of that friction as you can at the beginning of a relationship because it really has that runway then to allow you to work together well.
A personal anecdote was actually when I applied here.
Yeah.
And Mitch sent me times for an interview and I said I picked the coffee option in
Yeah.
person and then Mitch ended up getting COVID.
Oh,
So
that's
instead
right.
of emailing back and forth for like new interview times, he was like, "Oh, just re-pick a time on my Calendly."
Yeah.
And it took 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it
the
set the
best.
team's meeting and you're all
I was set.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I want to call about it is that there are people who don't like this, like viscerally do not like this, and I can understand why, and I think there are reasons to not use it. The reason is because there's two scenarios that really happen. One is if I use Calendly and you use Calendly, which one wins, right? If we're both wanting to use it, like what goes on? We've had it with bookings where a customer uses bookings and we're using Calendly, and it like there's this tension about which is going to the second piece, which is you are asking someone else to do the work.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You are sending out and saying, I want you to find time on my calendar, right?
Right.
Which can feel weird. I will tell you that for me personally, I don't have any problem with it. But if you are working with someone either that you don't know completely and this is a major endeavor that you're embarking on and you are going to this person and the positioning is very much like you are asking them for something, maybe it's appropriate to say, hey, I'm going to work with your, someone who's going to manage your time. Because in that case, maybe they've got someone who's a project manager or something. And we're going to sort it out. Right. And get on a call and sort it out. Right. I think there are scenarios that it can make sense, but I think those are small and getting smaller because for everybody involved, this experience, to Livy, to your point, is so much better than anything
So
else.
much easier.
Yeah.
So you're touching on our second point, really, of knowing your audience.
Correct.
So the first being use modern tools to help you get this done. Don't email back and forth. I think I've said that enough times. I think people get that.
We're really passionate about that.
And so use modern tools, but also point B,
Yeah,
know your audience. Know what's going to work for them. I can speak of one client we're working with, and email is the better way of getting a hold of them. And so we do have modern tools that we use and we link to in emails often, but we understand if we don't send the email, we're likely just going to miss each other.
Right.
So sometimes you just have to be flexible and try to use more than one avenue.
Yeah, I have a client that likes phone calls.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Right?
not my favorite, but it's
what
what
you gotta
works.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta do it.
And that's how you're able to add value.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, I feel like we're at a unique time in history where some of the workforce is older, didn't grow up with technology, and then there's the young side of the workforce where it's like they've had a phone in their hand since they were a kid. So recognizing that and being able to cater how you're working with those different groups is so important because you're bound to run into each of them.
How do you either invite them into your space as an external users, or you kind of integrate in their own space and meet them halfway?
Yeah. So specifically, what you're talking about is email, text message, and phone calls. Those are open platforms that anyone in the world can email me. Any in the world can text me, unless I blocked them, obviously. Anyone can call me on my phone, right?
Yes.
So there's no barrier. It's like seeing somebody on the street and saying, "Hey, I want to like flag them down. I want to talk to you," right? That the benefit of that is you can do that, right? Like that's the benefit is you get that free communication. The challenge is you don't have any context about what's going on. There's nothing going on. And so what you're talking about is cool. Like we could use those things, but when is it appropriate to say we're gonna take a little bit of effort and establish a relationship between our two, us, and use a different way to communicate that is more integrated, right? Like Slack, like Teams, like if you have a custom, like we talked about ERP or a vendor management system, or these types of things. When does it make sense to do that? And I think the answer is it varies, but you should always be trying to do that, right? Like where it makes sense, you should be trying to do that as much as you can, because that's where the pot of gold is, if you will, right? The benefit to your business is going to be making it easy to do that collaboration, and the only way to do that is to be on a shared platform, a shared system. And so sometimes that means that other party should join your system. Sometimes that means you should join their system, right? So for example, in a vendor management scenario, if I'm working for a large Fortune 500 company and they have a vendor management system, you better believe it. If I want to work for them, I'm going to take the effort and join their system and make that happen, right?
Depends how big your stick is.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if you have a big enough stick they have a big enough need, right? But like you're going to do those things, and it's the same way the other way around, right? At the same time, I can tell you, which is what Mitch is talking about, which is I wouldn't care about like what Mitch is saying. He wouldn't care about joining the vendor management system if it was like 3 clicks and a okay on this side and I'm done, right?
It's easy.
If it's a
seamless.
6 months onboarding process,
yeah,
like that's
take all this training now.
Yep.
Hours and hours.
No, which is the problem with these things, right? Which is why there's varying degrees, right? Which we've talked about in the past, and Emma can get into some details. But like for us in particular, we use Slack channels with integrated with our customers, where we invite them directly into Slack channels. We use Teams workspaces where we invite people as guests. We use Teams workspaces where we have shared channels that we bring in other people. All of these things have different levels of barriers to entry and the way you configure them. We also talked about video, how you share
Meeting
videos, right?
recordings, yeah.
So videos we share directly with a person, which doesn't require them to be invited into it. Like there's all these different levels and ways that you can work based on the technology. Choose the one that works. Again, back to audiences, back to, choose something, do something, don't not do anything, but choose the thing that works for your group. And we've changed. Like we have, as technology has evolved, as our customers have evolved, we've changed what we want to do for different customers and for in different ways.
One piece I want to get across here is, although we have talked about some of these can become more inconvenient because you are trying to up the security, there's actually this great place that you can get to when you do set what Matt is talking about up. It actually makes the collaboration and everything that much easier in the long run. So you may think sending an email with an attachment works. Well, maybe for the first one, maybe for the second one. When you've sent that attachment 26 times, then you're kind of thinking, okay, maybe we should have come up with a new way. Well, if you'd set up a shared folder where you both have access into that folder, where you can both edit a document together or, access meeting recordings, once you've got the folder, you can put 100,000, whatever you want into that folder, and that's not going to change. So if you just do it once, if you jump through that hoop once and help that external partner jump through that hoop the one time, it actually makes the rest of the relationship that much more effortless. It's sometimes just the first, getting to that first step.
The effort is 100% worth it. These are customers we work with all the
Yes.
time. We've worked with for a very long time. We're going to continue working with for a very long time. We need to be tightly integrated. Like that's just the way it is, right? For other customers, it's just not the same.
Yeah. I think it's maybe easy as we're just talking about this all in theory that we're saying, oh, our grass is so green over here. Come over here. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. But it is work.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is. You have to like get over the fence. Like it's not at face value as easy as it is to send an email.
Right.
But after
But
you
it's
get over that,
worth it. The
Right.
grass is green over
Right.
there. And
right.
if you can help I think the big thing we've talked about, the string that's really been through this whole conversation, if you set up that relationship well at the beginning and you gain the trust of that external partner, that they do trust the advice you're giving of you're not telling them how we're going to do the relationship, but that this will save us time. It'll save us effort. We're going to work together even better because of this. If they trust you in that, they will see the value
Mhm.
because we see it with our clients all the time.
There's also a huge it is an interesting macro thing when you think about it outside of just business and our technology, the technology things we're talking about. Mitch talked about the generational gap, and I would make it less a generational gap and more just a skill set gap
Sure.
between people, largely because people who grew up on Facebook and Instagram, unless they've had some dealt with challenges in their personal life related to security and management of things and understanding the concepts behind those things, they're also going to struggle for a little while. They'll probably grasp it a little faster than someone who doesn't, has a more rudimentary understanding of apps and of, all of these things. But, it is a struggle. Once as more people become more aware of it, like every day that someone learns more about it,
Right.
everyone in the world is better off because we all understand it better, right? Like because this stuff isn't going away. Like this approach to doing it is not going to change. And anyone who is, resisting it carte blanche
And by
are going to be continually left behind.
you're talking about using technology, modern technology,
Yeah,
to
to
collaborate
100%.
with people outside
Not
of your
saying,
company.
not
Yes.
saying, let's get on a meeting and I'll open the document and share my screen and let's edit the document together on my screen. Tell me what you want me to write. Like if that's what you're doing,
You almost realize
Don't do
kids
that.
these days will never know the pain of what Google Docs and the original collaboration tools or before any of that even came out.
well, this is a perfect thing.
It's
Is
crazy.
like lots of kids are growing up doing Google Docs for multi-person collaboration, so they understand multi-person collaboration. They get that,
Mm-hmm.
and they get sharing a file. They don't understand topic-based communication and collaboration.
There's a strategy to that'll have to
They-
be another podcast.
They don't
but-
understand. They don't understand the ramifications of what
yeah.
they're doing.
Yeah,
right?
there's definitely a strategy behind.
Because just working on a document, the security risk is like super low. Like I just share it with the 5 people I need to share it with, and when I don't want them to have it, I'd remove it or and that works for like my school project, but it does not work enterprise wide for a 5-year project that I'm, it's just not the same thing.
And maybe just to reassure everyone, again, we're talking about some big concepts. Even in our own clients, even in the same project, we have different levels of collaboration that
Yeah.
we work with people.
Yeah.
Sometimes we email, we don't get to the whole topic-based chat. We don't get to the integrated shared channels. We have a shared planner board where we can all see our tasks. But there's different levels throughout that relationship where every one of these is a unique thing that needs to be catered to and needs to be specific.
The big takeaway is that there are tools and you can fully customize depending on that relationship, the length of that engagement, to really take care of the pain points.
Mhm.
And it's so universal. We all know these pain points. If you've ever worked with anyone outside your company, you could name them.
Yep.
And people have thought about this for a long time and they've designed tools to help alleviate these. And we'd encourage you to really check them out because they've helped our bottom line, they've helped us save time, and it just makes it more enjoyable to work.
Do you want to reiterate our principles really quick for external collaboration, and then we can
Close
close?
it out.
First, we talked about using a tool to help schedule meetings. There's multiple out there. Definitely utilize those.
To
Second,
be clear, we're not sponsored by Calendly. They don't have
Yeah.
an affiliate program. If
We
they
genuinely
did, I would
like
sign
them.
up for it.
so true. Yeah, we're fangirls of Calendly. Second was know your audience. So understand that every person you're going to be working with might be a little bit different. So know who you're talking with or working with. And the last point we talked about was inviting external parties into your system or making the decision to join their system. So really being strategic about that and understanding where they're at and what's going to work for your engagement.
Cool. All right. Any closing thoughts? Otherwise, appreciate anyone that is out there listening. Obviously, we're kind of on this journey of focusing on different focus areas, what we believe makes a great workplace. I'll just plug, we've been doing regular webinars on this kind of content, and we'd just love to invite you to that. Feel free to join and learn more about these topics. And we're excited to share more to come in the future.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy collaborating.
Yeah. Good luck.